so I'm going to be talking today about effective altruism. Right? How many people are familiar, like have heard the term ever said by anyone, effective altruism? Okay, so I'm seeing like roughly about a half. How many people like feel like they can explain what effective altruism is? Like they understand it basically wrong. Okay, so that's about 10 people. How many people consider themselves effective altruists? Okay, strangely more people than who seem to know. All right, that's fine. Cool. So, what is effective altruism? Effective altruism is it's a movement that started in Oxford about 10 years ago. And it boils down to a few really simple ideas about how to do good better in the world. Okay? Now, most people, they care about doing good. This is sort of a kind of universal human thing, is that you want to do good to the people around you, to the people in the world. But the thing is, when most people think about doing good, they tend to turn their brains off, which is kind of weird because there are a lot of enterprises in life where we think really deeply about how to get stuff done, right? When we think about programming, when we think about governmental policies, when we think about private enterprise, right? Lots of things where we use the best tools that we have of reason and science and thinking really deeply about how to rigorously solve problems. But for some reason, when we think about how to do good, we kind of just sort of ride on our emotions and don't think about it too deeply. And the people who came up with effective altruism started from a place of thinking, why do we do that? That's really weird. In fact, it's kind of totally backwards, because doing good for the world is kind of the most important thing that we do. So why wouldn't we apply the best tools towards trying to do that? So the idea of effective altruism is thinking deeply about not just how to do good, but how to do the most good with the limited resources that you have, right? So in your life, you have time and you have money, right? And your personal skill set. Naturally, we all have limited resources. The question is, how do you apply those limited resources in the most effective way possible, right? And this means, of course, bringing a scientific approach to doing good. Even though we believe really strongly in science and about just about every facet of our lives, when it comes to charity or altruism, we very often just kind of ignore this part of the way that we reason through problems. And this seems to be a really big mistake, but it seems to be kind of universal in the way that people think about doing good. But it also means, in effective altruism, not just thinking about these things and not just trying to reason through them, but it also means taking action, right? It also means thinking about how to implement this into your own life so that you actually end up maximizing your own impact as an individual. So in order to kind of motivate this and give you a better sense of why this matters, and I want to go through some specific examples of things that will probably illustrate for you a little bit better some of the principles behind effective altruism. Okay? So doing good is harder than you think. And most things don't work, right? Why do I say that? I say that because, if you take a scientific approach to thinking about how to do good in the world, right, then really what that means is the scientific perspective is usually that assuming the null hypothesis, assuming that whatever it is you're trying to test doesn't actually result in an effect, right? Most interventions aren't successful. We see this in almost every form of research, where most research ends up finding a null result or something that's not statistically significant. But for some reason, in charities, we don't assume this. Right? When we're thinking about how to do good in the world, we don't assume that things mostly don't work. We assume that things mostly do work, which is kind of a strange assumption. So, how many people have heard of Scared Straight? Cool. So, Scared Straight, for those of you who are not familiar, was a big it was a big thing in the 80s and 90s, right? And it was basically this program. They recently did like a show on A&E or something like that. But so here's the idea. It was a program that targeted at-risk juveniles. Right? Basically, people who were in rough neighborhoods or who had been in some kind of juvenile detention center, and who basically, the people who instituted this program did not want them to go to prison, right, when they became adults. And so the idea was that you would take these young kids and you would parade them around prisons. And these prisoners would like give them talks about how terrible prison is and how scary it is to be in prison, blah, 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 right? So basically the idea is that it would scare them so much that they would decide not to go to prison anymore. Or not to do bad things. And so for 2 decades, this was lauded as an important social program for combating the crime wave of the 80s and 70s, 80s, and 90s. And of course, the growing concerns around gang violence. So this was like a really, really massively funded social program implemented in all sorts of cities all around the United States, right? So all that sounds really great, yeah. But here's the problem. Scared Straight didn't work. What do I mean that it didn't work? What I mean is that when they actually ran meta-analyses 2 decades later, they found is that Scared Straight increased recidivism rates of crime by 13%. Right? So all the money that they were funding into Scared Straight didn't just have no effect. It had the opposite effect. It made people commit more crime. Right? That's really weird. Okay, let me give you another case study. So let's look at education in East Africa. Right? So most of you are probably aware that East Africa has some of the worst educational outcomes of anywhere in the world. Very, very poor country, not a lot of infrastructure, poor institutions. And so, of course, within education, there's been a lot more interest in trying to become more rigorous about understanding what does work and what doesn't work. So, how many people are familiar with randomized controlled trials, or RCTs? Okay. So a randomized controlled trial is kind of the gold standard of a scientific analysis. Okay. So a lot of the times when you do an intervention, you'll just say, look, we want to, I don't know, let's say buy textbooks and see if that helps improve outcomes, right? And then what they'll do is they'll buy the textbooks, they'll measure stuff afterwards to see, did things improve? The problem with that is that there's a lot of confounding variables, right? It could just be that, like, well, it improved just because of some other reason that happened around the same time. It improved just because you bought them stuff. It didn't matter what you bought them. If you bought them, shoes, they would have had just as much increase in outcome. And so you need to have a control. You need to randomize who fits in those controls, and blah, blah, blah. You guys all know this, you studied science. And the thing is, this is very rarely done because it's expensive and it requires like a very scientific approach to deciding what works and what doesn't. So some folks decided that they wanted to run randomized controlled trials in East Africa to figure out how to get more people to go to school. Because East Africa, as it turns out, has very poor educational outcomes, and specifically very poor attendance in schools. This is not just because the schools are really crappy, but also because if you are a young child in East Africa, there's a good chance that your family either needs you to work, or just like, the school is so shitty that you have no real incentive to go there, and the teacher-to-student ratio is really bad, so students end up not going to school. So there was a group called the Poverty Action Lab at MIT that wanted to figure out, hey, how can we get more students to go to school? Okay, and they came up with these 3 interventions. So the first one was to buy students free school uniforms, okay, because it's sort of post-colonial, whatever, they have uniforms, so everyone needs to have them. Another intervention they wanted to try out was conditional cash transfers, okay? This is the idea that, look, if you go to school, we'll check attendance, and then we'll pay your family some amount of money for every day you go to school, right? So it's like sort of direct incentive to make the students go to school. And then the third one was merit-based scholarships for girls, okay? So if the girls had good grades and they're performing well, then they would have their education subsidized. So these are the 3 interventions they wanted to try. Now, I want to ask you guys, which of these you think was most effective? So how many people think that merit scholarships for girls was the most effective intervention? Okay, 2 people. How many people think conditional cash transfers for girls, paying them to go to school, was the most effective? Okay, so a lot of people. How many people think free school uniforms was the most effective? Okay, cool. Now, I want to ask somebody, so you thought that the merit scholarships were most effective. Why do you think they would be most effective?
So, 2 reasons. One, I first looked at why it would be more effective than the other 2. I don't think conditional cash transfers would work because you're incentivizing children to go to school, not families to send children there. You care about educational outcomes, not that the children are physically present in the building, right? That just means, like the parents say, don't come home, or else we don't get money.
Yeah.
Free school uniforms don't really affect educational outcomes because you don't study better or worse depending on what you wear.
Right.
So merit-based scholarships is the only one that actually incentivizes students to perform when they're there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great argument. That's a fantastic argument. Somebody who thought that conditional cash transfer was going to work. Yeah. Why do you think that?
I think you're associating money with a positive outcome, and I think in that area, especially, I think you understand naturally that money is a value when your family doesn't have it.
Right.
So I think it's a very direct relationship you're establishing.
Right. So direct incentives is the easiest way to motivate somebody to do something. Okay. And somebody who thought free school uniforms was most effective. Why do you think that?
School uniforms are oftentimes like a barrier of entry for like students and foreign countries.
Yeah.
Just by providing that baseline in general for everyone.
Right.
I can see why it would increase more than just like traditional cash or merit.
Right. Totally. So just a barrier of entry that just gets removed when you buy everyone free school uniforms. Okay. So notice all those were fantastic arguments, right? Okay. Let's see what actually worked. It turns out free school uniforms were massively more effective than anything else. In fact, they were 10 times more effective than conditional cash transfers. Okay? Now notice, there is no fucking way you could have guessed this without actually doing the experiment, right? And that is the whole point of this exercise, is that you cannot know a priori what's going to work and what's not going to work until you actually run the experiment. And notice that most charities don't do this, right? If you were looking at these three options, and these are three different charities that funded three different things, how would you decide which one to fund? Well, you probably think about it a little bit and say, well, okay, merit scholarship sounds great, I really like that. Or you might think, well, I think traditional cash transfer is the most direct way to incentivize people, but you would not know until you actually got on the ground and ran the goddamn experiment. So, but it turns out there was a fourth thing that they tested. And this fourth thing was just telling parents how much money they spent if they went to school. And it was massively more cost-effective per unit dollar than anything else they tried. And in fact, the researchers didn't even think this would work because they assumed that the parents, because numeracy rates in East Africa are pretty low, they assumed their parents would not understand the charts that they would show them about how much money their students would make or their children would make if they went to school. But this was by far the most effective intervention that they tried. Right? And it turns out if you funded any of those things, your dollar would have done almost nothing compared to the people who just told the parents that their children would make more money by going to school. Okay? So, what's the point of this? The point of this is that it is very difficult from first principles to reason out what works and what doesn't. You have to try shit, and you have to study what actually works and what doesn't. And the difference in effectiveness between the least effective thing and the most effective thing is many orders of magnitude. Okay, so last example. Back in back around 2009, 2010, there was a couple dudes, Holden and Ellie, who worked at a hedge fund in New York City, and they made a lot of money. And they were kind of nerds. They were like, okay, I have all this money. I kind of want to give back. I want to donate some money to charity, but I want to figure out where is the most cost-effective place that I can donate to charity. Now, it turns out there weren't a lot of really good tools for this at the time. And the most prominent tool at that time was a website called Charity Navigator. How many people have heard of Charity Navigator? Okay, yeah. So Charity Navigator, if you guys don't know, it's like, if you Google anything, you'll find Charity Navigator very quickly. So it's basically a website that has a catalog of like tons of 501(c) nonprofits. And what you can do is you can look up any nonprofit you want, and it'll show you a breakdown of basically their revenue, right? So whatever they have to report in their public filings, of how much is their revenue, how much they get in donations, how much they pay their staff, and you see this like sort of pie chart of like this much of the donations went to fulfillment, this much went to paying their employees, this much went to fundraising or marketing or whatever, right? And so people love this stuff. They love being able to look at a pie chart and say, great, 85% of my donations went toward operations or whatever, right? Or went toward fulfillment. And this was the only thing that you could do. Now it turns out this is basically useless. Okay? Why is this basically useless? The reason why this is basically useless is the slide we just showed you, right? I just showed you that there is a 100x difference between the worst interventions and the most valuable interventions, right? And what that means is that a nonprofit that was spending 1/100th of another nonprofit that's doing the opposite intervention would have the same impact on the same outcome, okay? What that means that the percentage that a nonprofit is spending on their operations doesn't fucking matter. The thing that matters is how much impact are they having per dollar donated, right? And the only way you can tell that is by reasoning through the very hard problem of, does the thing they're doing actually work? And if so, how well does it work? And nobody was trying to do this. And so Holden and Ellie were so frustrated by this because as working at a hedge fund, you would never look at a balance sheet of a company and say, okay, how much are they paying their employees? Oh, that's too much. This charity sucks. Or this company sucks. It's like, no. You look at how many things are they selling? How are they doing the actual thing they're trying to do as a company, right? But nobody's doing that for nonprofits. That doesn't make any sense. And so they decided they were going to go do it. So they started a company called GiveWell. And now every year, GiveWell basically collects a bunch of data from nonprofits and basically their internal data on how effective their interventions were. Okay? And so ideally it looks for randomized controlled trials, but any data they can get from any of these charities, they collect and then analyze. Right? Now it turns out most charities don't want to share this data. Okay? Why do you think most charities don't want to share this data? Well, it's probably not surprising because most of those results don't look great. Because most things don't work, which you should not be surprised to see, right? Because of course most things don't work. But that said, what GiveWell does is they aggregate all this information from all these different charities, they analyze it using the best tools that they have available, and try to determine how much pound for pound impact do each of these different interventions have when you compare them side by side. And every year they issue a list of what they consider to be the most effective charities at the margin to donate money to every year. So, just sort of another example of what happens when you take these principles and apply them toward solving a problem that currently doesn't, or at the time didn't exist, which is figuring out how to evaluate charities more rigorously. So, what is the approach that an effective altruist takes to figuring out where to fund things? So, okay, maybe I get the idea, okay, sure, I want to be more scientific in the way that I think about how to get stuff done. But another element of effective altruism is the idea that you should not pre-decide where you're going to donate to, or what cause you're going to donate to, or a particular kind of charity you're going to donate to. Instead, you should think more broadly about where can you have the most impact with your donations. Right? So, the first question you want to ask yourself is, how important is this area that I can donate to? Okay, so or that I can work. To give you an example, let's say that you're thinking about donating to the cause area of diseases, right? Because you think diseases are really terrible and you want to help about that. There are some diseases that are extremely rare, right? Such as, let's say, Huntington's disease. Very, very rare disease, right? Now you can pour a lot of money into trying to cure Huntington's disease, but it turns out many, many more people have cancer than have Huntington's disease, right? And so if you imagine they're equally hard problems, which I don't know that they are, but let's pretend they are, then even if you solve Huntington's disease, you would prevent many fewer deaths than if you were able to cure cancer, right? So there's just an obvious question of how important is this problem? If you solve it, how big of an impact is it going to have on the world? The second question I want to ask is, how crowded is this area? Okay. Now, a good example here is cancer. Now, it turns out cancer is a very big problem. It kills lots and lots of people all around the world. One of the most deadly diseases. It turns out there is a shitload of money being poured into cancer research every year. And if you have any half-baked, decently good idea to attack cancer, chances are you're going to be able to get it funded. Okay? Because there's so many dollars chasing so few good research ideas within cancer research. Right? So cancer research is a very crowded space. It is very unlikely that if you add another marginal dollar to all the dollars willing to fund cancer research, that you're going to make a big impact in terms of actual viable research. However, there are other diseases, such as, for example, malaria or other tropical diseases, that affect very, very large swaths of people, but many fewer people are actually donating money to them. Okay? In large part because they tend to affect people outside the first world, they tend to affect much poorer countries, there are sort of persistent problems in those areas, which makes them not as, these sort of good news cycle type stories like Ebola or other sorts of outbreak type diseases. But these sort of persistent diseases that just kill a lot of people in poor countries, they don't get as much play. And as such, they're much more likely to be underfunded. So you can have much more impact per the marginal dollar that you put into a charity because of the fact it's less crowded. And then finally, you want to ask the question of tractability. Right? There are some interventions there are some problems that are more tractable and ones that are less tractable. Right? So one good example is, war is a really terrible thing. Right? Wars are really bad. We obviously don't want war. But if you want to try to fund a charity to stop war, I have no idea how you're going to do that. I don't think anybody has a good proposal for how a nonprofit stops war. Right? On the other hand, there are a lot of things that we think is actually pretty tractable if we just had more money. Right? So research is one of those things. Okay, we have some research agenda for how to cure diseases. Right? We have no research agenda for how to stop war. Like, people have been trying a very, very long time, and nobody seems to be able to do it besides the head of nation states. And I don't think a nonprofit's going to make much of that. So let me just give you an idea then of sort of a very whirlwind overview of what are the cause areas that many effective altruists who, many people disagree even with ineffective altruism, but what are some of the big causes that effective altruists tend to think are the most tractable and the most important and least crowded? So one of them, and the most obvious one, is global health and development. Okay? So the basic idea here is that most of the time your dollars can have a lot more impact and alleviate a lot more suffering in places far away, right? Because of the fact there's just less money there, everything is much cheaper, and the problems are more basic, right? So very basic things like, look, our child mortality here is very, very low, right? Because we have a lot of basic medical care that we provide to people. But this is less true in other parts of the world, right? There are many, many diseases that are very, very curable and very tractable, but the resources just aren't there. And so there are many child deaths that can be prevented every year, just with a relatively small amount of money compared to what you can do in the first world, right? So global development, global poverty, there's still over 1 billion people in extreme poverty around the world, and a lot of that can be alleviated just by direct interventions. Okay? Now, another area that a lot of people like to look at is animal suffering. Okay? So this obviously depends on your moral framework, but if you think animal suffering is important, then if you sort of just look at the magnitude of the problem, I think factory farming is one of the worst things that we do as a human race, if not the worst thing that we do as a human race. There are over 60 billion farm animals raised each year within the system of factory farming. And it probably at the margin looks like such an overwhelming problem that it's like, okay, what can we even do about that? How do we stop people from eating factory farm food? But there are a lot of things that you can actually do for relatively small amounts of money within factory farming to alleviate some of the suffering that goes on in the system. Right? So one example I'd like to point to for that is there was an EA group that was lobbying I believe, McDonald's to try to get them to stop buying chickens that were raising battery cages. Okay, so battery cages are these very, very small cages that prevent the chickens from being able to move, and they end up living in basically extreme pain throughout their entire lifespan. And McDonald's, for whatever reason, decided, okay, you know what, sure, we're going to stop getting chickens that are grown in battery cages. Yeah. And so now, naturally, McDonald's is such a large purchaser of chicken that it ended up mutating their entire supply chain, because all of the farms that supply McDonald's also supply a bunch of other retailers. And it's so hard to separate out their operations, and they were like, screw it, let's just get rid of battery cages, right? Because it just makes everything simpler. And basically, wholesale, the entire industry transitioned from battery cages to non-battery cages, right? And this happened with actually a relatively small amount of investment to end up alleviating a lot of suffering in the system of factory farming. Now, finally, there are sort of these larger, more global endemic risks that a lot of effective altruists like to look at as being important problems that are worth considering, right? So you can kind of imagine, let's say we were back 60 years ago at the advent of the Manhattan Project, right? You kind of wish that there were people thinking more actively about, hey, when we invent nuclear weapons, what effect is that going to have? How do we make sure that we're careful about it? And perhaps we could have avoided situations like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or some of the other situations, Chernobyl, or other situations that we've had of being very, very close to the brink of causing very massive catastrophes due to the proliferation of nuclear weapons. So it's not necessarily that we could stop any of this from happening, but at least we know a lot more and be a lot more careful in time before that technology sort of outpaces us, right? So a lot of people are concerned about, of course, nuclear war, but then there are things like pandemics, biohazards, bioterrorism, and artificial intelligence. So you've probably heard, the late Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, Sam Harris talk about some of this, and so this is another pervasive problem that a lot of effective altruists like to focus on. And lastly, there's policy reform. So policy reform might sound like, oh, okay, so political campaigns. Not really, because most of the time, donating to a political campaign, you might think, look, Donald Trump is a bad dude, and maybe he's very bad for the world, and we want somebody else in power. But at the margin, donating to a U.S. presidential election is one of the most crowded donations you could possibly make, right? It's very, very unlikely that a marginal dollar is likely to move the outcome of a presidential election. But there are a lot of other policy situations that are much more tractable in terms of funding, right? So these tend to be things at either municipal or local level. They tend to be things that are don't tend to make national headlines, but can have very big impacts at the margin, right? So for example, things like prison reform, they tend to not be part of the national debate, but they end up being a lot more tractable because there are many fewer parties involved in that fight, and it can alleviate a lot more suffering. Or things like electoral reform, getting people to be more evidence-driven and cost-effectiveness-driven in the way that they make decisions at an electoral level. So, maybe this all sounds interesting, all sounds well and good, but how does this apply to you, humble applicant student? Well, there are a few ways that you can get involved if any of this piques your interest. So one, and the most obvious one, is your career choice. So most of you obviously are here because you need to be software engineers. So I'm told by Academy I'm not allowed to make you not do that. In general, if it's something that you're considering of how do I maximize my impact given my career, there's a great website which actually was very influential to me when I was sort of thinking about these topics 5 or 6 years ago, called 80,000 Hours. And 80,000 hours is called that because the average person in their working life spends about 80,000 hours working their job, right? So the question that they ask you is, how are you spending those 80,000 hours of your life to do the most good, or to as much good as you can? Now, of course, the most obvious way, given that most of you in this room are going to end up being high-income earners when you go out and work in the tech industry, is through donations. Now, there's an organization called Giving What We Can. It's an awesome group, and basically what they do is founded by Peter Singer, who's a famous philosopher from Australia. And Peter Singer, specifically Giving What We Can essentially advocates giving 10% of your income to high impact charities. Okay? And they basically make you take a pledge. There's a big community. It's all great. I took this pledge. The idea is that basically, 10% of your income is actually not that hard. Basically living on 90% of your income. Basically, it's just like, I just like skip one raise. Right? That's what it takes to be a member of Giving What We Can. And if you think about it, this is actually pretty tractable for most people, and also, because if you donate to charity, it's all tax deductible, so it's basically literally as though you just forwent that raise. I think it's useful kind of putting in context what that means. Assuming you're all software engineers living in Silicon Valley making $100K, this is the distribution of how much income people make around the world, adjusted parity purchasing power adjusted for parity adjusted for US dollars. So turns out if you make $30,000, which is the US median income, which of course you guys are making a lot more than that, you're in the top 4% globally. Okay. There was, if you guys remember the Occupy Wall Street bullshit. There was all this cry. I mean, this is pretty dated at this point, but there was all this cry about the 1%, right? The 1% of people on Wall Street. It turns out if you make 100K, you are well within the 1%. You're probably within like 0.4% if you make 100K. Right? That doesn't feel like a lot, but on a global scale, on the U.S. scale, you're not 1%. But on a global scale, you absolutely are. Right? You are among the luckiest people on Earth. And I think a conversation that the Valley has been having more and more with itself lately is about privilege. Right? And so we often talk about privilege along dimensions of race, gender, and class. But one dimension that people don't talk about very much, and I think I understand why they don't talk about it, is nationality. Right? By virtue of the fact that you are born in the United States, you have access to basically the most powerful economic engine in the world. Right? There are lots of people who wish they could be at App Academy learning how to code. And it's not that they're not smart enough, it's not that they're not capable enough, it's not that they're not hungry enough. They just, by accident of birth or immigration or whatever it is that got you here, you have access to this. And most people don't. And so the way that I think about it, and kind of the perspective that dominates for me, is that I am really fucking lucky. I'm lucky. There are a lot of reasons why I think I'm kind of not canonical, well-positioned, went to Harvard, blah, blah, blah. But like, there are a lot of elements of my own privilege that I did not earn. Right? I was born in the United States, and I didn't choose that. But I basically, grew up speaking English, which is the most valuable language you can speak on Earth. I basically have enough brain power to come here and learn this stuff, and get to do this through no virtue of my own. Right? And yes, I had to work hard to get here, but to my mind, given the level of privilege that I have that most people don't have, it seems to me like a pretty small way of paying it forward to decide to donate some of that back to charity. So this leads to the idea of what's called earning to give. So earning to give is this idea that, let's say you were starting from a place of, I want to figure out how to do the most good that I can. And this is actually literally what I went through back in 2013 when I first started thinking about this stuff. Basically around that time, I used to be a professional poker player. I quit playing poker professionally. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I made a lot of money as a poker player, but I learned at a very young age, and I think at a younger age than most people do, that money didn't really make me happy. And the big gulf that I saw, not just in myself, but in other people, because I saw a lot of people who made a lot of money very young, how big that gulf was between money and happiness. Right? And I knew that I wasn't really motivated by money, but I wanted to know what to do that would give me some kind of feeling of meaning and impact in my life. And I came across the writings of effective altruism. And I became convinced, and this is kind of basically the line of argument that I sort of came to agree with, is that imagine that I decided I was going to go join the Peace Corps. Okay? Seems like a very noble thing to do. It turns out I'm kind of I'm not a very hard worker when it comes to like really manual labor, so like I probably wouldn't be a great member of the Peace Corps. But it turns out, for whatever reason, I'm very driven by competition, and so I do really well when I go and work in competitive fields like working in tech or whatever. And so if I went and worked in tech or got a job making some kind of high income, what I could do is I could take that money that I made and donate it to the Peace Corps. And probably I could actually donate enough that I could fund another person who's probably better at being in the Peace Corps than I am to go do the thing that I would do. And in fact, I could probably fund 2 people or 3 people if I was effective enough at earning money. Right? And basically, it's sort of an argument from competitive advantage or comparative advantage that I think, and I think this is probably true of all of you here, given the fact that you've gotten here, that you guys are all smart. You guys are all capable enough to get here, to learn how to code, and to make a bunch of money in what is essentially one of the hottest markets in world history, which is Silicon Valley in the mid 2010s, right? Like sort of a historical aberration that it's easy enough to make this much money after spending 3 months in a boot camp and 3 months of job searching or whatever it is they tell you. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But that is what you're good at. The fact that you've gotten here proves that that's what you're good at. And so, given that's what you're good at, perhaps the best way for folks like you or folks like me to give back is by earning a lot of income and donating as much of that income as is reasonable to charity. So, tell you a little bit about myself, just to kind of give you the fuller story. I already mentioned I was a professional poker player, public lives, and I wanted to earn to give because I was convinced that that was the best way for me to have an impact on the world. Okay? And before that, I really had no interest in coding. It wasn't even on my radar that I should become a coder. But essentially, I read 80,000 hours, and I became convinced this is what I should do to have as much impact as I can on the world. And so I ended up looking through a bunch of different ideas of like what are the different fields that earn a lot of money, and the one that looked least repulsive to me was the tech industry. And I was like, all right, Google, Facebook, I don't know, these are cool companies that change the world with the advent of the internet, and I saw all that while I was growing up, and I was like, that sounds cool, I want to go to Silicon Valley. So I applied to every single coding bootcamp in the Bay Area. I ended up getting into App Academy. I moved out here and started taking classes, or class, I guess. Same thing you guys are doing. And I ended up doing pretty well. And after the end of my cohort, I ended up getting hired as one of the TAs/instructors. And eventually they promoted me to director of product. So I don't really know what I did, but I did something. All the products you guys have now, thanks to me. And I then decided that I wanted to go directly and work as a software engineer into tech. And I assume that most of you guys are probably familiar, at least at a high level, with the story. Applied to a bunch of tech companies, didn't go well, then I applied more, and then it did go well. That's my blog in a nutshell. And then I started working at Airbnb, making a bunch of money, and donating to charity. So basically, since I started at App Academy, also I studied English and philosophy in school. That's worth noting that I basically had absolutely no technical background. And I learned about effective altruism, entered the tech industry, App Academy, okay. And then once I started working at App Academy, that's when I began learning to give, donating 33% of my pre-tax income every year to charity. So I've been doing that now since 2015, when I first started as a TA at App Academy. And I intend to continue doing that and hopefully increase that over time as well. So since then, I worked at Airbnb for a year, and then I fucked off, and then I ended up studying crypto, and then I started worked for a little bit at a crypto company. Then I started a startup, and then now I work at a crypto hedge fund called MetaStable Capital, which is run by this guy called Rob Cox, who's the founder of AngelList. He's like a big crypto guy. And that's what I do today. So that's just kind of sort of whirlwind, kind of walk through my life. And most of where I give to are, the first one is AMF, which is the Against Malaria Foundation, which is this charity that distributes anti-malarial bed nets to inhibit the spread of malaria in countries that are really ridden with malaria. The second cause I tend to donate to is charity advocacy. This basically is the idea of trying to get more people to become more rigorous about the way that they donate to charity and think about charity. So I try to spread the message of thinking more deeply about effective altruism. And then lastly, existential risk research. So I've become increasingly concerned about many of the things that I think aren't getting enough attention in the catastrophic risks that accelerating technology can impose on us, given that there's sort of these coordination problems among many different people who are all trying to build this technology, but not a lot of people are thinking deeply about what happens when this technology gets out of pace with our ability to really manage it. So, what's in it for you? Why should you get involved? I like to think that it adds some purpose and meaning to your life, adds some direction to your career in a way that makes it not just about you, but about something bigger than yourself. It also is a really awesome intellectual community, which you can find here at App Academy with what's the name of the group?
The Effective Altruism Club.
The Effective Altruism Club. They're really smart, awesome people, and they will help you get jobs, right?
I've gotten all my jobs in the past 7 years, except for one through the community.
So there you go. That's a yes. And I think it at least for me, it provides me some solace because I tend to be a pretty cynical, skeptical person, and so I have sort of a high bar for accepting what someone is telling me. But effective altruism is one of the few things in my life that I know I'm not bullshitting myself about. Right? One of the few things that I'm like, okay, it can feel like a tech company is kind of bullshit. It can feel like doing my job is kind of bullshit. It can feel like what I'm doing, I'm just drinking some Kool-Aid about some story that doesn't really make sense. But the one thing that I know, sort of the solid ground that I sit on, is that I am making a fucking impact in the world, right? Regardless of whatever else is happening in my life. And that, I think, is a really powerful thing that few things can truly do. So I would like you all to pull out your phones. Pull out your phones. I will wait until I see phones in front of everybody's faces. We can. Pizza's waiting in the other room, so you guys can pull out your phone, otherwise nobody's gonna get it. So pull your phone and go to effectivealtruism.org. Right? This is like the canonical entryway into learning more about effective altruism. So if you don't want to do this, you can just click around your phone or something and look busy. But for those of you who are interested, navigate to effectivealtruism.org. If you want to learn more, this is the place to start. Okay, this will sort of give you a nice primer, show you other resources, and if you want to, of course, reach out to the folks here, and they can connect you with more resources and introduce you to people in the community, both here at App Academy and in the Bay Area more widely. So that is it for me. We were going to do a Q&A, but I think we're going to move rooms because we want to feed you guys. But yeah, that's it for me, and then we can move over and we can do Q&A.
We have a minute or two for questions if you guys want to do it.
Okay, we have a minute or two for questions. It'll make the pizza come faster if you guys ask questions. Yes.
So,
Aha.
thanks for checking in. By the way, I do that. It seems like you were quite successful in your time here. Do you think that there was anything you did that allowed you to be so successful? And if you were to look back on your experience, right, you think you may have made any mistakes while you were here? What would you have done to fix them?
Great question. I have not thought about this in a long time. Let's see here. What did I do? Okay, so I want to say that one of the things I did that probably made me successful is that and I think this is probably not universalizable, but I just like had, I was in a relationship at the time, and my second other was in Austin, where I moved from, and I moved to San Francisco basically telling her, look, I'm doing this thing, it's totally insane, probably not going to see you for like 3 months. Basically, like, I'll see you, like, she would like come out, once every month or so. But essentially, like, with the time I'm here, I had a complete one-track mind. Like, the only thing I was here to do was to learn how to code. And that sort of allowed me to really focus in a way that I've basically been able to focus on very few other things in my life in the time that I was at Apple. So I think not everybody's able to do that. People have different life circumstances when they come here. Some people have families, some people have kids, some people have other responsibilities. But at least for me, that sort of paring away and kind of treating App Academy as this sort of like monastery of code really helped me to just like only focus on one thing and one thing only. So that was very helpful for me. One thing I think I probably made a mistake of is not sleeping enough. So that was like the biggest thing is that I would get too freaked out by being behind on something or just not learning something or being like, man, I really phoned that in today. I wanted to like review or get ready for the assessment or whatever. And the reality is, and I've definitely appreciated this more and more the longer I've gone through my career, is that the marginal hour spent sleeping is almost always more valuable than the marginal hour spent working. Right? It's like if you're actually trading work for sleep, you're almost always making a bad decision. Very, very rarely does that work out in your favor. Now, a lot of times you're trading a marginal hour working for like a marginal hour not sleeping, and that's fair. But sleep is just so fucking valuable that like it just can't be overstated how important it is to just get enough sleep, even if it means, okay, I didn't finish that thing today. Other questions? Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like the argument of investing your money up front and then donating a larger sum later on?
Great question. That is a great question. I have a blog post actually exactly about this. So it's a common argument that I hear from people, especially people who are like really in finance, people in finance. They tend to ask me like, well, okay, you donate some of your money every year, but like, aren't you ignoring compounding returns? Albert Einstein, compounding returns more powerful, blah blah blah. Basically, I think this argument makes sense, right? Like, okay, if you just sort of go like Andrew Carnegie style and just like accrue a bunch of money for the rest of your life and then donate it all at the end, it's a bigger number at the end, right? Oh, okay, bigger number is better. But I think this misses something very, very, very important about how to actually do the accounting on both sides of that balance sheet, right? Because so it turns out if you donate money, let's say we were deciding do we want to put money in like the index fund today, or do we want to donate that money today? Let's say it's $100,000. on one side of the balance sheet, the index fund grows at 7% a year, whatever it is, right? And that's good. Later it'll be more. However, let's say that we're donating to, let's imagine just like building infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, just to give a really trivial example. Well, it turns out if you donate that money now, that also has compounding returns, right? Because that infrastructure goes towards improving things more quickly earlier on, right? So think about, how much does that investment compound on the other side of the balance sheet relative to the money you're investing in the index, right? And also, are there time-sensitive aspects to making an investment now as opposed to making it 20 years later when things get worse, right? You have to do accounting on both sides. And the idea is that, look, if you took this argument to its logical conclusion, right, that investing in the index fund was better, then why would you, first of all, you should keep investing in the index fund. You should never donate to charity, right? Because index funds compound faster, right? If you think it's true, why would it not be true for every other dollar, right? So you should invest all your money in the index funds. But then even when you die, why should you donate it when you die? That's really arbitrary. Why don't you just keep it, keep growing and growing and growing? Like, when is the point at which it makes sense to actually donate it, right? Like, what does that have to do with your death that now is the right time to donate so the argument sort of has this very obvious, ad absurdum if you really think about it seriously, right? So either, one, it doesn't make sense to donate to this thing at all, or it makes sense to donate now. Now, I do think that there's a compelling argument to be made that if you're in a career or in a line of work that's capital intensive, then maybe it does make sense to invest in that thing you're doing right now. Like, for example, if you're starting a business, or you're like an investor, or you are a poker player as an example, where donating money every single year would just make it harder for you to earn money in subsequent years, right? As an employee of a company, that's not the case. But there are certain careers where it's capital intensive, you need money to make money, right? I think in those careers, it's trickier to reason about when it makes sense to donate, when it makes sense not to donate. But I think in most careers, when careers are not capital intensive and they're more cash flow oriented, I think that argument really just falls down. It doesn't make sense. I do think you should save money for yourself, no matter what you're doing in terms of donating to charity, because ultimately, you should take care of yourself first before you deal with anybody else's mess, right? And I think that very much extends to charity. But I think the argument of saving money and having it compound doesn't ultimately make sense. Should we move rooms?
The problem is the pizza hasn't gotten here.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Come on, we'll run down the clock. We're almost there. Man. Almost there.
So I can do mine.
Should get here.
Oh, jeez.
But we'll make sure people have a chance to eat.
Yeah, you'll definitely get a chance to eat. Once pizza's here, we'll let you know, and we'll all shuffle it together.
I can do the community thing now.
Let's just take one question, then we'll hand it off. Yeah.
I was wondering your thoughts of universal basic income, or have you considered that as something to donate to or research into?
Yeah, that's a great question. So universal basic income, I am somewhat uncertain about whether universal basic income actually works. I think the evidence on this is still being gathered. There are large trials being done. So far, my sense is that they haven't been super positive. But it's really hard to model because there are some things that intrinsically you can't really do a randomized control trial on a lot of things, right? And I think basic income is one of those things where it's very, very hard to actually run a valid experiment, right? Kind of in the same way like policy sort of has this problem, is that for example, if we advocate for a policy change or a regime change in some country, right? We can't actually measure what happened in the alternative because only one of those things happened, right? And so a lot of things you just kind of have to play, you sort of have to make your best guess. I don't feel like I have enough information to really know what my best guess is of universal basic income. I think in theory, it's one of those things that sounds great. In practice, I don't know if it actually works that way. But the jury's still super, super out, so I just don't know. Other question?
So, how do you account for problems in your local community? Because at the end of the day, most things that you're going to be having most impact for your dollar are going to be in the third world. And I do care about that a lot, but at the same time, I do live here.
Yeah.
I don't live
Totally.
so.
So in my mind, it's a great question. Because I think one of the pitfalls you can fall into is think, okay, well, if I really subscribe to all this, right? Doesn't that mean that I'm just saying fuck you to everybody around me and only giving money to emaciated children in Africa? And I think the answer to that is no. The right way to think about it, to my mind, is just sort of thinking about your if you want to earn to give, or do basically what I'm doing, or people who do give what we can to pledges. The right approach to it, I think, is just sort of segment your finances, right? And basically say, look, this part of my finances, I donate to effective altruist causes that I'm really rigorously thinking about. I try not to be emotional. I try not to be biased toward things that are close to me just because they're close to me, or things that are going to give me some kind of social benefit or make me feel good or whatever. Right? I'm just going to do whatever I think will have the most impact. With the rest of your money, then you just sort of do whatever it is that you want to do as a human being. Right? And naturally that means donating to causes that are close to you, giving money to I have a lot of friends who are very active in the community, and a lot of times they come to me with ideas that I don't think are that really compelling, but I want to support them. And I think they're awesome people, and I'm like, cool, yeah, totally. I will throw in a couple $1,000s to help kickstart your thing, right? And I don't think it's the most effective thing I could do, but it's part of being a human being. It's just engaging in your local community. So to my mind, the right way to do that is just segregate it out, right? Say, look, for this part, for the rest of my money, I can basically be as unconscious or unrigorous as I want to be, because a lot of what charitable giving is about is not maximizing your impact. Right? A lot of what charitable giving is about is just being a human and interacting with people in your community. Right? It's about signaling. It's about showing support. It's about having shows of solidarity. Right? It's not really about maximizing the dollar, the impact per dollar, and that's okay. I think it just makes sense to separate those two things out, right? And sort of treat them as different buckets from which you're drawing your donations. That's the way that I think. Yeah.
Do you think that nonprofit organizations are necessarily more effective than for-profit organizations? The example I want to bring to you is Tom's Shoes, right? And one of the things they do is that for every shoe they've sold since the inception, they've donated a shoe.
Right.
And in doing so, they've become one of the largest, donator of shoes in the world.
Totally.
Right? So why is it more efficient to put your money into a shoe charity than just buying a pair of Toms and letting them do it?
So I agree with you in principle that there's no reason why a for-profit charity couldn't be more effective than a nonprofit charity. I think it really depends on the particular, the sort of facts and circumstances kind of thing. Where, for example, I'd be very suspect if you were claiming to me that anti-vaccination for-profit company were more effective than a nonprofit company. Right? But on the other hand, if you're telling me that the creation of, for example, clean meat, so clean meat, or I don't know what the term is now, but clean meat basically being like lab-grown meat, which is a very, very good way to try to mitigate factory farming, because if you grow in a lab, then it's much more cheaper than, or much less suffering involved than raising the whole cow. Lab-grown meat is awesome, but it's mostly for-profit companies that are working on this, right? Because there isn't, it's pretty tough to imagine how a nonprofit is going to be as effective as a for-profit. It's something that's very clearly for-profit, having a whole new business model to create meat. So I think it depends on the particular thing you're looking at as to whether you should expect a nonprofit or for-profit to be more effective. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for our students going into the job search?
Do I have advice for you guys? Probably. I would assume so. What advice have you heard? I don't know. Yeah, give me some specific questions on job search. Let's do some job search questions.
How do you get a job?
How do you get a job quickly? Already have one. That's the fastest way to have one. Probably. So the honest answer is that. So I think App Academy has a vested interest in not making you freak out about your job search, because if you're freaked out, then you're going to do much more badly in your job search. And I also have a vested interest in not making you freak out about your job search. So it's important to recognize that everything that you're hearing from people is intentionally designed to make you not freak out. Okay. At the same time, it's also true, and you're going to notice around you that some people are getting jobs faster than others. Right. So you're going to notice the people who tend to get jobs fast are people who, one, they already have a technical degree, they already have some work experience. Those people are the first out the door, right? Then you get people who have a lot of connections. They went to a nice school, maybe they studied liberal arts, but they have a strong network around it, right? Those people are probably next to go, right? And then there's people like me, who I just have a dog shit resume. None of my story makes any sense to anybody who I ran into when I was job hunting, right? And I probably would have been one of the stragglers if I was in a normal cohort in academy and I wasn't hired on. And I think for the folks, so it sort of depends which bucket you're in, and you should expect a different experience based on which of those buckets you're in. But depending on which bucket you're in, I'm going to assume you're in the last bucket, because otherwise you're probably not as stressed as the other folks. So if you're in the last bucket, you're probably the most stressed out. And the basic answer is that one, it's going to suck. Two, it's going to take a while. Three, you should measure yourself not on how long it's taking you, but how many applications you've sent out. Okay? So don't think in terms of I'm taking longer than other people. Think about I'm trying to get as many applications as I can done in as short a period as I can. Right? Benchmark yourself on your positive trajectory rather than how much better other people around you are doing. Because they're not fighting the same fight you are. Right? Some people here actually have it easier than others. And it's not because you finish the assessments faster, it's not because you have better peer scores or whatever the fuck, it's because you are in a different situation than those other people. Right? And the job market will treat you differently, and that's okay. All right? You will be able to get a job, it just takes you a different amount of time, a different number of resumes sent out, and a different amount of work on your own part to get to that other side. Okay? So I used to give a lecture here back in the day, and I had this analogy that I really liked, which is that in every single one, whether or not you're a religious person, you can imagine that somewhere out there, God has a database. The database has, for every single one of you, a number of how many applications you'll have to send out before you get a job. Okay? And that number, if you saw the database, you'd be like, what the fuck? Bullshit. How different it is for all the people in this class, right? And it is not by virtue of how good you are, it's not by virtue of how smart you are, or how hard you work, it's just for fucking other reasons that depend on some other stuff out there in the world about why it's going to take you guys different amounts of time. Some of it's random, but a lot of it is just like kind of who you are in the job market to employers, right? You have no control over it. You can't change that while you're here at Applicant, okay? All you can do is get better at interviewing and apply to more jobs. And your only job during your job search is not to get jobs any faster than anybody else, because you have no control over that. People will get jobs faster than you, I guarantee it. Okay? The only thing you have control over is how long it takes you to decrement that number until it hits zero. And the more applications you send out, the more times you whiteboard, the more times you do all those things, that number will get lower and lower and lower until it finally hits zero. Okay? So all you have responsibility for is working down that number. Okay? That's it. Do not focus on anything else but whittling down that number day by day. Cool?
Awesome.
Pizza? Pizza?
It's not here, but tell me it's here within 5 minutes.
Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead and dismiss to Hopper. First, Eric, do you want to get up and say something real quick? And then...
Yes. Okay, so, hi. For those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Erica Edelman. I'm about to slack out to you a sheet with resources. I've been involved in the effective altruism community for about 7 years. So there's a handful of people here who are happy to talk to you. Besides me, there's also Cassandra, raise your hands. There's also John Wolverton. Nab knows a decent amount. And I'm trying to see if I see any.
Josh is.
Yeah, Josh is gone, but you can ask him too. He's on pizza duty. So you can ask us about questions. I'm also here to inform you there is a very engaged and active rationality and effective altruism community, particularly in the Bay Area. One of our most exciting things we have right now is a physical community center that has events almost every day. And I don't mean we get together and talk about charity all the time, because that would get boring after like day 100. We have whiteboarding, we have hackathons, we have public speaking workshops, we have guest speakers, we have rooms for really, really cheap if you have people who need to crash in the area. So there's just a lot going on. It will be on the resource sheet. So check it out and come talk to me if you're interested, or talk to John, who can also tell you more about the discussion group that we run weekly here.
Yeah, so we're at a discussion group where we just talk about ethics, ethical issues in technology. We're meeting on Friday at 12:45, so you go get lunch, come back, chat with us. And so let's go ahead and go to Hopper, and hopefully the pizza will be there momentarily.